This is WLEE Richmond, a nationwide station. Richmond, the people, the events, and issues that concern and affect our lives. This is Exploration, a public affairs series of WLEE News.
Good morning, I'm Randy Davis. My guest this morning on Exploration is Henry Marsh III, Mayor of Richmond. Mr. Marsh has served on City Council for 11 years. He's also acted as Vice Mayor. He's a member of the Richmond Regional Planning Commission, was once a board member with the National League of Cities, and is on the Advisory Committee of the League. In 1975, Mr. Marsh served as President of the National Black Caucus of Local Elected Officials, a nationwide organization of all black mayors, councilmen, and local elected officials. The top news story of 1977 in Virginia was the March 1st election of City Council, the first such election in 7 years. Council then chose a lawyer, Henry Marsh, to serve as the city's first black mayor in modern times. Mr. Mayor, we appreciate you taking your time out of your busy schedule this morning and talk to us, and we welcome you to Exploration.
Thank you, Randy. I'm honored to be here, and I've enjoyed your show for a while, and I'm glad to be a guest.
Well, very good. I know you've got Project One, number one, foremost on your mind this morning, and I want to talk about that in just a moment. But first of all, let's look to the future a little bit. The new year, 1978, is upon us, and are you basically optimistic or pessimistic about the new year?
I'm optimistic. I think that Richmond is in a very important and delicate posture at this moment. We have the usual problems of other cities, but we have a unique opportunity, in my opinion, to solve or to make inroads in solving many of these long-standing problems. And I'm very optimistic about 1978. I think 1978 will be the pivotal year in determining whether or not we will avoid many of the problems that have confronted other cities in the nation and begin solving some problems, or whether or not we will make the same mistakes that they made. And the General Assembly is coming into town in a few weeks. We have a new governor in the governor's mansion, and we have many, many opportunities to help Richmond become a great city, a greater city. I think it's already a great city, and I'm looking forward to participating in some of these endeavors in 1978.
Do you have any personal resolutions or goals or anything you've set up for the new year?
Well, I haven't sat down and made any resolutions. I learned many years ago that that is not necessarily a good thing to do. But obviously there are some uncompleted tasks which I have been involved in, which I would like to complete during 1978. And I hope to do that. And one of the things that I did tell myself several days ago is that I would avoid assuming any new obligations so that I wouldn't overcommit myself. In addition to being mayor, I'm a lawyer, and I have obligations to my clients and the court. And I have found over the past 7 months or so that I have a difficult time in wearing both hats and doing both jobs. So to avoid being overcrowded, I'm going to try to avoid taking on any new commitments during 1978, except those commitments which further the objectives of the city as mayor.
You mean to tell us you're not going to run for the U.S. Senate this year like everyone else?
No, reluctantly I've decided not to run.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. Okay, you said that you hope Richmond will continue to be a great city, but getting it down to the nitty-gritty, the people of the city of Richmond, what kind of year do you think 78 is going to be for the individuals in the city?
Well, I think it's going to be an interesting year. We will have to make a decision on Project One, which I think will be vital for the city and for the development of downtown. I think if we make the right decision, we can then begin to give relief to taxpayers and homeowners who have had to bear a large share of the load of financing the government and the governmental services here in the city. As compared with the surrounding counties, I guess you know that Richmond has the highest real estate tax rate and the highest real estate taxes of any jurisdiction in the state. This is a great concern to us on council, and we will be working to remedy this. First, in projects like Project One, which tend to increase the tax base in the private sector and the business community so that we can give relief to people as homeowners. Secondly, by working very closely with our representatives in the General Assembly to make sure that we get an equitable distribution of state funds which flow to the cities. Third, in working with the General Assembly to ensure that if a solution is made to the annexation question, and there's a feeling that this might be resolved during this session of the General Assembly, that solution be equitable to the city of Richmond in terms of the city receiving adequate compensation for any tampering with the city's right to annex. This is a very difficult and delicate issue, but we hopefully will come up with a good solution for this in 1978. And trying to do something about the outflow of people from the city. I think the population loss that we have experienced over the years has hurt the city in many ways. We get federal funds based on the number of people we have, and state funds. Our schools have experienced a decline in population because of a declining enrollment. And we are trying to reverse this trend of people leaving the city. And one of the ways we're doing this is the residency requirement that you've heard a little bit about recently. And in fact, there's been some criticism of the requirement, but I think this is a necessary step to encourage people to live in the city. And if you look upon the residency requirement as a positive step, we're saying to people who work for us that we want you here. We want you as a part of us as citizens, and not, living in the surrounding jurisdictions. And I think it's a very useful step, and it's one of the steps that hopefully will be taken in 1978. We will continue our efforts to work with the business community, and we have spent quite a bit of time doing this in 1977. We are part of a Richmond Regional Economic Development Council, which will consist of Richmond, Henrico, Chesterfield, and Hanover. And we are forming this council, and we will be going out trying to encourage existing industry to remain in the city and trying to stimulate new industry here by going across the country seeking out industries to locate here in the city. This will do two things. It would help increase the tax base, not only here in the city but in the jurisdiction, surrounding jurisdictions, and also will create new job opportunities for people living in the Richmond area. We think this is a very significant step that these four jurisdictions have come together to make this endeavor jointly and cooperatively. And this is one of the most exciting things that we will be involved in 1978. In housing, we're going to have to, in order to get people to live here, we're going to have adequate housing stock. And we will be approaching that problem from two perspectives. One, trying to encourage the building of new housing units here, especially in the moderate income level. And that's a need that the federal government has not met and the private sector has not met. And also in making funds available or giving tax incentives for people who will renovate the existing housing stock. In a city like Richmond with a large percentage of housing more than 20 years old, it's important for us to do this. So these are ways in which we hope to encourage people to remain or to live in the city as a way of helping to avoid some of the problems that other cities have experienced. We're going to continue our support for the public school system. 1978 will be a year in which we focus on the building program, and a year in which we make sure that our school plants are first rate. And we have neglected these building programs because of court restrictions for many years. And 1978 will be a year in which we face up to this problem and make commitments in this area. So there will be many, many areas in which we'll be working in 1978. And I'm looking forward to meeting these challenges. I like a good scrap and a good challenge, and I think that we'll have our hands full in 1978.
Let me just take a break here and remind our listeners that you're listening to Exploration from WLEE, and my guest this morning is Henry Marsh III, the mayor of Richmond. Before we do an exploration program, we try to get in touch with some of our listeners and ask them what they would ask you if they had the chance to. And your picture's been in the paper recently. You've been heard on radio and different commercials concerning the thing that came out as the main concern of the people we talked to, our listening audience, and that is Project One. You mentioned it briefly already. I'm interested whether you were just a citizen, whether you were a council member, vice mayor, or mayor. When you first heard the idea of bringing a convention center to Richmond, what were your thoughts?
I can't remember, Randy, when I first heard the idea, because the idea has been kicked around for so long.
Mm-hmm.
But several years ago, council picked a site for a convention center and directed the administration to develop plans around that site. The site was the current site, and the administration has been working very hard since that time. As vice mayor, and since being mayor, I've worked very closely with the Downtown Development Commission, which was a group of citizens appointed by the mayor to work with the city in helping to develop a plan. The convention center is not a project in itself in isolation. It's a part of a total project which we have dubbed Project One, which is a combined effort of the city government and the private sector to reverse the slide of the downtown taxable values by coming up with a project which would be visible enough and big enough in size and scope to demonstrate a commitment to revitalize the downtown. We think Project One is such a project. It combines the public resources with the private resources. The city is not doing the whole job as we tried to do when the Coliseum was built. And I think this is a good project in that public and private sector funds are involved. It was designed with the private sector interests in mind, and it is calculated to stimulate development downtown. Already, since the project was announced, both Tullahammers and Welland Roads have announced $1 million renovations, $1 million plus renovations in their downtown stores. This is contrasted with other cities where some of these same stores have announced abandoning the downtown stores in favor of suburban stores. So already we've seen some benefit. But in addition, Tullahammers and Welland Roads are now considering supporting a mall project between the two stores, which would also increase the taxable values downtown and make shopping downtown much more attractive to visitors and to residents, not only of the city of Richmond, but of the surrounding areas. We think this is important because, as you know, in the Richmond area, the city does not share in any sales tax collected in the counties. And the cities are not a part of the counties like they are in most cities in the country. And it's important for Richmond to maintain financial activity in the city itself, so that we can give relief to taxpayers who live in the city. We think Project One is an outstanding project, and I'm very proud to support it. I think that with the expressway system that we have already in place, the Coliseum already in place, and the hotel and banquet type facilities we already have in place, the Convention Center Project One will be just the right amount of activity and structure available to make Richmond very competitive with many other people who visit cities from time to time, and will put us in position to recapture and to capture some visitor dollars, which will be very helpful to meeting many of our needs as a central city. So I'm very excited about Project One, and I think that all citizens who study the project, who study the data, will also support it once they understand how important it is to maintaining the health of the city.
When you first started formulating plans for Project One, talking to people, leaders here and at other places, Did you anticipate fully the opposition to the project? Did you think there'd be this much, or is there this much opposition to it?
Well, I have been around long enough, Randy, to know that whenever there's any public controversy or any public question, there will be opposition. And I expect that, and I expected opposition to Project One. I don't know that I'm surprised by the amount of opposition. I'm not sure in people with whom I have conversed and people with whom I've met and discussed Project One, that the opposition is widespread, as it appears to be. If you have noticed that most of the organizations that meet regularly, civic organizations, and keep abreast of problems and opportunities in the city, and comment on these problems and opportunities from time to time, have all taken stands in support of Project One. I'm speaking now of organizations like the Richmond Chamber of Commerce, the Richmond First Club, the Richmond NAACP, the Richmond Urban League, organizations that are interested and committed to people and to progress, social progress, as well as interested and committed to having a healthy city. And when you look at the list of organizations, almost all of the organizations with people in it who have worked very hard over the years to make Richmond a great city are supporting Project One. And the opposition just can't compare to the people who are for it. And I think, including, by the way, the Richmond Crusade for Voters and other organizations that are interested in political activity. So I don't think the opposition is that widespread, and I'm not overly surprised by the opposition that we have. I think the overwhelming majority of citizens in the city will support Project One.
Well, regardless of what numbers are involved, the opposition has waged a pretty big campaign. They've gotten some headlines, the people who are opposed to Project One. Do you think that maybe when the plans for Project One and its outlining of the phases were announced to the public, that maybe if a better campaign had been started, if more information was disseminated about how good the project could be, that the opposition wouldn't be quite as strong. You see what I'm getting at? There's been some criticism I've heard from people who say we don't know what Project One is, and mainly we just heard from the opposition.
Right. Well, I think that's an accurate statement. If we had devoted more attention and more effort at informing more people, the opposition would have been less. I think that's consistent with my remark earlier that when people learn the facts about Project One, they will support it. But a lot of people who have, for example, signed petitions were asked to sign, not necessarily opposing Project One, but to sign as an indication of a right to vote. And there was an implication made that council was trying to keep people from voting on something that they normally voted on, and you had to sign the petition to avoid losing a right to vote or to gain a right to vote on something, let the citizens decide. A lot of people have come to me and said they were asked to sign a petition on the theory that protect your right to vote, and the people are to decide about Project One, not necessarily to oppose Project One, and they've indicated that they signed the petitions so that people could vote on it rather than to indicate that they opposed to it. Now, I don't know how widespread this was, but a lot of people informed me of this. I think that to a certain extent people were being misled in that historically in the city of Richmond on bonding issues people have not voted. There was a charter provision put in initially, but it has only been used one time. I believe that was in 1951. And we have approved bonding proposals. The council has bonding commitments of over $100 million. We built a downtown expressway system, which cost over $150 million, and we didn't have a bond referendum. And one reason is that the cities are so structured that there are other safeguards in the charter against abuse. For example, in the counties, there's no limit on the amount of bonds the counties can float, but they have to go to the people for approval. In the city, there's an 18% limit, so we don't go to the voters for approval. And there is no, and not only in Richmond, but in other cities in Virginia, in the Commonwealth, the charters were structured and the state law is structured so as to provide other safeguards other than having voting on bond issues. So to a certain extent, the people who were led to believe that this was a right or a tradition that people exercised were misled, and that it has not been a tradition in my 11 years on the council that people have voted on bond issues, and we've approved projects requiring bonds much larger than $12 million. So I think this has caused some of the people to sign petitions. I think once we explain to them that it is not necessarily a good thing to have citizens voting on bond issues, because very few citizens are going to take the time to study the various matters that would have to be considered in making a proper decision on whether or not to spend certain funds for bonds. Serving on city council has almost become a full-time job, and that we work on committees, we meet with the administration regularly, we study volumes and volumes of material and documents, and to ask citizens who don't do this to make a sort of a gut reaction decision on whether or not we should have certain bonds is not really fair to them. And I think that was one reason why the city fathers and the General Assembly set up another system for making these kinds of decisions in Virginia.
Once again, let me remind the listeners this morning that they're listening to Exploration. My name's Randy Davis, and my guest this morning on the special New Year's Day program is Henry Marsh III, Mayor of Richmond. Well, you said before, if there is a referendum, you think that the bond issue would still pass. From what you just said now, it sounds like to me you're kind of afraid of people voting on the bond issue and giving a gut reaction, which may not be, in your terms, the best decision. Do you think that the bond issue would still pass if there was a referendum?
Yes, I think the bond issue would pass, but I have to be mindful of experiences in other cities in the country on bond issues where people have voted on bond issues, in some cases, on the basis of gut reactions rather than on getting the data involved in making the decision, and then making a decision based on studying the data. And this has happened in other cities, and bond issues have been defeated in other cities. So although I'm confident that if the people of Richmond looked at the facts, they would decide favorably on Project 1, I'm not taking for granted the campaign of opposition, because I think that if we aren't careful, the project could be defeated by persons who would not necessarily get the data and read it before making a decision.
Okay, the bond sale, a large part of which, large part of the funds would go to Project 1, has been postponed indefinitely. Was scheduled for January 11th. It will be sometime in the future, and assuming that the pro-Project 1 forces, yourself included, and the Vice Mayor, will be trying to disseminate more information to people and try to maybe convince people that the Project 1 is a good idea. What have you made any plans so far about what you're going to do between now and the bond sale, whenever it is?
No plans have been made to date. I want to correct one statement. I think the proposed bond sale was $32 million. Only $12 million related to Project 1. And the opponents of Project 1 have lumped together all of the bond ordinances, which would include the entire $32 million, as a focus of their attack. So that what they are doing is they are asking for a referendum on all of the city's bonds this year, which include projects for schools and public works and other areas.
So in postponing the bond sale, council is not thinking only of Project 1, but also of the...
Well, it wasn't just council. It wasn't council's decision. The decision was made by the opponents who circulated the petitions. Although they told citizens who signed the petitions that, this is to give you a right to vote on Project 1. In fact, what people were signing was a petition that addressed all of the bonds. So to that extent, people were misled, and they were told that this is to give you a right to vote on Project 1, when in fact the people were really being asked to sign a petition to give them a right to vote on all of the city's bond issue this year. And I think this is one example of the kind of misleading statements that have been involved in the campaign so far to stop Project One.
If enough signatures are certified and if a referendum does occur, what legal action would the city take?
Well, no decision has been made on that yet. We haven't even been informed of any options at this point. We will have a meeting next week to discuss this with members of council.
Okay. I've also heard some rumblings from the anti-Project One forces that the upcoming council election in May, I believe it is, Project One could be an issue there. Do you think so?
I don't know. At this point, I have no way of knowing. I think that that would depend on circumstances developing between now and May.
Okay. Have to wait and see. Well, we're just about out of time. Let me ask you one quick question. What do you plan to do politically in the future?
I hope to serve one additional term on city council, one additional full term, and then quietly retire from politics.
One full term as mayor, another full term?
Well, if it's council's decision to return me as mayor, then I would be happy with that decision. But I think that before I got into politics, I felt that 5 years was long enough for any one person to serve on city council, any other body. And as you know, because of circumstances, a long hiatus between the elections and other circumstances, I've been on now going on 12 years. And normally I would be willing and anxious to step down at this time, but I think in view of the fact that there are new members of council, many new members in a ward situation or a district situation, there could be additional new members that perhaps some experienced members of council should stick around for a little while longer to make sure that the transition into the district system is a smooth transition and that our government continues to work effectively and efficiently. Some of the things that I've learned over the past 11 or 12 years, I would like to have an opportunity to put to use in the next 2 years, and for that reason I will agree to offer myself for public service for 2 more years. But after that, I've definitely decided that it'll be time to fade away.
Gracefully.
Gracefully.
Well, I don't mean to retire you early here, but considering your past time in city government and what you expect to do this coming year and the next 2 years, when I tell my children that Henry Marsh was the mayor of Richmond, what would you like me to tell them was the most outstanding thing about that mayor?
I answered that question once, that he was a good tennis player and mayor. But apart from that, I think that I would want you to say that he did a good job, the best job that he could do as mayor of the city, and that under his leadership, the city tried to help people who needed help. And I think I would be very happy with that comment.
Well, I think I'll have no problem telling you that. Mr. Mayor, thank you for talking with us this morning, and let me be one of the first to wish you and your family a Happy New Year, and thank you for joining us this morning.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity, and I also want to wish you and all of your listening audience a very prosperous and successful New Year.
On behalf of them, let me thank you for that. My guest this morning has been Richmond's Mayor Henry Marsh, and we invite you to join us again next week for Exploration. I'm Randy Davis, WLEE News.
You've been listening to Exploration, a public affairs series of WLEE News. We care about Richmond and the issues, events, and groups that make up our daily lives. If there's something you'd like to hear on WLEE News, call us weekdays at 288-2835 or drop us a line. And be here next week for Exploration.